Brennan gave a slow, measured nod. The sacrifice for this labor is a heavy and unsettled thing, Bellatrix. The soul of the queen is so deeply anchored to her earthly clay that she cannot be wrested free by simple prayer alone. To unmoor a soul from its sepulchre clinging requires a tether in this mortal realm, a tithe of the living clay, Daenerys added, her expression grave. The offering required is a rare marrow mist we call vital dew, Brennan explained, his gaze penetrating. It is a subtle, hallowed nectar drawn from the innermost wells of the living body. It acts as a scaling ladder, a palpable bridge, which the Guardians use to reach down and clasp the Queen's shade to sever her from the decay she clings to. I absorbed this with a mounting shudder. It was not merely a bent of the heart. It was a visceral substance of the earthly frame to be drawn from my living body. The sacrifice felt terrifyingly tangible. Brennan spoke to my mind, his voice weighted with history. You recognize the unfolding of years, Bellatrix. This spirit is none other than who you surmise. She is the queen, the wife of King Dario III. Her suffering is the invisible malady that has beset your castle for 2 decades, fueling the decline of the king and the shadow over the entire court. Stunned, I could only breathe one name into the silence of the mind: Queen Berengaria. After our vigil, Brennan restored us to our earthly vessels. One of the guardians convoyed us back through the umbral reach, toward the fleshly anchor within the castle. A sudden perilous lurch of leaden weight slammed into me. I awoke the next morning in my narrow pallet. The passage from the unbound spirit to the dense prison of my mortal frame was a harrowing one. For a moment I was suspended between 2 worlds, clinging to the fading memories of the veiled path, the figure of Kaxulk, the austere wardens, and the harrowing image of Queen Berengaria. The exhilarating awe of the firmament crumbled as I recalled her spirit form writhing amidst the sepulchre-clinging decay. It was a visceral surge of dread that shattered my peace, quaking through my ribs and settling like lead in my belly. But the unyielding grip of the steward's vigilance and the remorseless schedule of the castle reasserted their claim. I sprang to my feet. There was no time to ponder the boundless. In the massive, vapor-choked kitchen, I searched the room. Near the great hearth stood Master Diego, speaking with Dana Iz. They discussed some trifle, the tally of dry linens, but as I approached, our gazes clashed. Not a word was exchanged. It was a silent, searching flash of recognition. I saw the shared burden in the steward's stony eyes, the knowledge of our tryst tonight. Daenerys gave me a quick, grave glance, then both donned the weary guise of castle duty. Maintain the faint. I took a hunk of bread and cheese, settling into a corner near Lillian's, whose warmth offered a rightful presence. "The king's women," Lillian's husked, her voice a low growl as she pummeled the dough. "They grow bolder with every glass, Bellatrix, especially that Greta. She commands meals that would wither the grapes on the vine. Their pride is the canker in this place, and as my mother used to say, that rot don't just happen." Before I could reply, the heavy oak door of the kitchen groaned open on rusted hinges. The broad, formidable figure of Mistress Adria strode in, her keys clashing at her belt like a warder's warning. "Bellatrix!" Her voice pierced the vapor and the clatter of knives. "You are summoned. Lady Greta, the king's most favored paramour, demands your presence in her chamber on the instant. Do not linger." I followed her, my heart hammering a frantic beat against my ribs. Lady Greta's chambers were a discordant strike against the castle's sombre stone. The walls were shrouded in gaudy silks of rose and gold, and the air was cloying with foreign essences that made my lungs yearn for the clean, cold air of the Empyrean. "Ah, the scullery mouse," Lady Greta murmured, reclining amidst a surge of velvet cushions. She did not deign to look at me. but instead pointed toward a small, wrought casket of darkened oak, bound in silver fretwork. I require secrecy, and the meanest rank is ever the most hushed. You will take this casket. Do not unseal it. Do not breathe a word of it. My heart hammered a frantic beat. This was the clandestine errand I had feared when Mistress Adria bellowed my name. In a castle where that rot don't just happen, carrying a sealed casket for the king's favourite was a path straight to the noose if I were betrayed. You will take the way from the kitchens to the chapel crypt, she hissed, the one even the eldest hinds pretend does not exist. You will go down and find the small, unmarked vault beneath the altar steps. Place this casket beneath the stone with the serpent hewn into it. Lock it, and return the key to me, on the instant. My lady, the crypt is sanctified against us, I whispered. Lady Greta's eyes flashed with perilous coldness. Refuse, and not only will you be scrubbing stones outside the castle walls, but I shall ensure that old Lillian's is cast out to the thistles. Now go, the watch changes at the next tolling of the bell. The threat against Lillian's quenched my refusal. I snatched the casket. It was startlingly heavy and felt faintly cold against my palms, as if it held a thick glass flagon. Was Lady Greta a pawn for the malevolent beings of the umbral reach? I slipped back into the kitchen and sought the hidden door behind the wine rack. As I drew the bolt, I saw Master Diego in the corner. He stood rooted like an aged oak. As I entered the way, his eyes clamped onto mine. It was a profound, silent question. What are you doing? I gave a quaking shake of my head. I was being forced to play the enemy's gambit. I vanished into the choking darkness of the veiled stair, the biting casket clutched tightly in my hands. As I took my first step into the unbound blackness, a shadow detached itself from the tons beside the way. It was Master Diego. He gave no nod of recognition, his face a mask of iron. What is it now, Bellatrix? Diego's voice was a low, controlled rumble, barely audible over the clink of tons. Did someone send you into the deep? I could only whisper back, desperate to preserve the silence. Lady Greta commanded it. She threatened Lillian's, Master Diego. I must be fleet. He knitted his brow, the hearthlight catching the sharp strain around his eyes. He said nothing further, but his hand moved to thrust something cold and hard into my palm. It was a thick beeswax taper, already lit, sheltered in his cupped hand. His silence confirmed my worst fears. The peril was real, and he was powerless to stay it. He immediately turned back to his tally of tons, the very image of unmoved coldness. I shot the massive bolt back into place, sealing the breach with a hollow, echoing clack. The choking gloom of the secreted stair consumed me. The air was biting, more piercing than the lowest dungeon, thick with the reek of sodden earth, long corruption, and the sharp, rank tang of iron. I threaded the steps by wonted habit, trusting the murmured tales of the elder drudges. The spiral coiled low, the aged masonry hollowed by the tread of lineages who had buried mysteries in the profane depths. The fall ceased at a tight arched aisle, flanked by vast marble-bound tombs. This was the royal chantry, the hallowed fold for the king's near blood. Here the ether was hushed, yet humming with a deep, wild knell. I grasped, with the grim surety the beyond worlds had granted me, that this reach was steeped in the biding shadow echoes of the departed. I stumbled upon the shrine treads. To the left, all but lost in the shade, was a slight, unbranded timber hatch. My knuckles quivered as I threaded the aged, massive ward. It yielded with a rasping groan. Within, the taper scarce thrusted back the dimness. I swept my palm over the flags until my tips traced the slight, ghastly shape of a serpent hewn into the rock. A dark drive pushed me to see within the casket. With fearful care, I lifted the lid. Tucked on black silk was a small, plugged vial of thick, cloudy glass, filled with a sludge-like, faintly glowing red drink. The ghostly blow was sudden. It throbbed with a might that felt foul to the spirit. Insight fastened sure. This was no blessed oil, but a tainted gore that glinted like fresh spilt blood, a lure for the wights of the shadow realm. As I shrank back, a strange scent, not of earth but of Greta's costly sweet water, pricked my wit. I slammed the lid fast. The casket was a lead weight in my hold as I shoved it under the serpent stone and scrambled out, locking the ward with a frantic snap. Just as I fumbled with the key, a sound broke the silence. Not from above, but from the main corridor leading to the chapel, the slow, deliberate scraping of leather boots on stone. Someone else was here. I pressed my body against the cold marble of the altar treads. The stamp of the boots grew louder, a heavy beat echoing off the tombs. My heart hammered like a panicked bird in a coop. The footsteps ceased at once. A terrible silence fell. I knew I could not risk the taper. With bitter slowness, I pinched the wick, leaving the crypt in stark darkness. I hurled my body toward the steps. My palms scoured against the sweating, cold walls. My boot slipped, sending a spray of grit onto the stone. The stamp behind me shifted straightway. They were hard upon me. I scrambled up the winding way, hauling my body by the wall cracks. Finally, the kitchen hatch. I threw my weight against the heavy bolt. It groaned, staying my hand, then at last slid home. The loud thump was hard upon, followed by a furious shattering blow from the foot of the steps. The sound of something striking the stone door below with fell might.